Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world today. Thank you for taking time from your valuable life to join me. I have a very special guest today. This is a woman from the United Kingdom by the name of Nicola Farmer. When I saw the video of what she was doing, I was so excited I couldn't get to the end of the video before I tried to contact her. What she does is in line with a theory I've had for a long time about contact modalities and the abilities that we have if we're able to shut down the left rational analytical brain. My research partner and interview partner, Sinead Willihan, has an expression on her Facebook site, which says, it's a quote from George Eliot, which says, "What do we live for, if not to make the world less difficult for each other?" The work that Nicola is doing is extremely, extremely important. We're going to have her join us in a minute, but I'd like to start first with a little video of one of Nicola's very young students reading from a book with a blindfold on. And you'll see he puts his little hand over because he claims that it's too bright to read, so he's actually shielding the words so that he can read them better. And through the interview, we will show a few videos from some of the students that Nicola has trained, and we'll get into why this is so important and why, if we understand it, we can actually help the blind to see and the deaf to hear. So here's one of Nicola's young students reading with a blindfold.
Sparkled. The farmer had been home.
But Mr. Lion, there you go.
But
yeah,
in the shelter of the big tree, her home was safe.
Can you tell me why you're putting your hand over the words, this hand?
It's like a bit light.
Is it bright?
Yeah.
Do you want me to turn the light off?
Yes, please.
Okay, carry on reading then.
Yep, Mother Mouse carried Little Mouse back to his
There you go.
His old bed.
That's
she laid him gently down. Little Mouse snuggled tight. Mother, he yawned. This is my bed.
It's
just right, or of course it is, said Mother Mouse, smiling. Sleep tight, Little Mouse.
good boy. Well done.
Now here's a little intro, a little promo that Nicola did for herself that sort of explains in general who she is and what she does.
My name's Nicola Farmer. I'm a global spiritual consultant. That includes being a healer, a psychic medium, a teacher, a spiritual teacher, and somebody who guides, facilitates and empowers others to embark on a spiritual journey of discovery to reach their true potential as a human being.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Grant Cameron, and I'm very, very happy to have you join me today, and I appreciate the fact that people would take time from their busy schedules to join me. As a lot of people know, I've been on the leading edge of what is really weird, potential new things in the world, And I've run up against two people. I have one of them here today. A number of years ago, I had some interaction with a woman by the name of Dr. Diane Hennessy Powell, who worked with autistic children. And she had a very famous child. Her name was Haley. And Haley's claim to fame was that she hit 162 numbers in a row right telepathically. She was nonverbal autistic, which meant the left brain was completely basically shut down. Her right brain was going full speed, and she was basically purely telepathic. I told Diane Hennessy Powell, if it was a fair world, you'd be in line for a Nobel Prize. Unfortunately, it's not a fair world. My guest today is Nicola Farmer, and I'm joined by Sinead Wellahan, my assistant from Toronto. When I first saw Nicola's interview with where she's teaching these children, and you'll see as we go through what she's actually done, it was almost like a replay of Diana Hennessy Powell. I said, you know, if this is a fair world, this research would be Nobel Prize winning. Unfortunately, it's not a fair world. And I think for a lot of people, they're just going to ignore this. This is one of the most important things I have ever seen. When I first saw the video of the children that Nicola has trained to see through blindfolds, I immediately knew, and she mentioned the fact that the left brain was not active because they're young children. I could not watch the end of the video. I had to immediately try to contact Nicola to try to get an interview with her. I think this is extremely important material, and I think people should tune in and pay attention to this. This is one of the most important things I've seen in 45 years of research. So good morning, Nicola, and welcome to Sinead, who may be involved in this down the road, because you also do not only, maybe I can start with this, you not only do children who have the increased ability to see without their eyes, but they also have an increased ability to hear. And my assistant Sinead has 90% hearing loss, and I think it's very important that this be brought up, because I remember seeing the two children separately, and you didn't ask them. They both said, I can hear things a mile away. So can you basically just sort of describe how you got into this, how you suddenly discovered this and started this training with these children?
Yeah, thank you, Grant. So I went to Canada several years ago to learn a method to work with the children, and brought it back to the UK. It was quite an interesting time, because there was just myself working with the children, and in this concept that most adults hadn't been able to grasp in their own minds what it was that we were doing. I felt it was a big, brave step to take, but I knew I had to take it. So I brought the work back to the UK, and I started working with the children, and I knew that we needed to get this out to the world, because this was game-changing. This was going to be something for the children to take forward in such a way that the education system had the potential to change with it. The children have the potential to grow exponentially with it. So this progressed, and I carried on working with the children, and then I kind of hit a bit of a wall with it, because of circumstances that began to change, and I knew the work needed to change in line with the children of today. So I received several downloads, spiritual downloads, in this particular method that we're using now, which I became very excited about. And I started to work with the children with it, and actually we got faster, better, stronger results with the children. So I then built a teacher training program, and literally it's just growing and growing. It's been quite a journey.
So you got this download, what they told you to get a piece of paper or something, and it happened in 20 minutes. So they basically gave you this. So this is coming sort of out of the field of information.
Yeah, it's direct from consciousness.
So describe what these children can basically do, what they've been able to do, and what you think is involved. Why are these children able to do this? What do you think is actually going on?
Okay, so as it's evolved, I've learnt more and more about it, and I've come across people that have been able to explain things to me. So when the children go through the program, to be honest with you, seeing without their eyes is almost the cherry on the cake, because the program actually takes them through a process of healing. If they have traumas from this life, from past life, it heals traumas. It enables their brain to work in a completely different way, and education can become very simple. They go through growth exponentially, because when they are able to tap into the levels of consciousness that are available to them through their own consciousness, then there's nothing they can't do within what I would perceive to be the limits of their life path moving forward. But what I've understood about it is the life path can open up quicker and easier than if they go through life in a regular way.
Okay. Now, they're able to see, and they're able to play games. You have them playing games, playing ball stuff with these blindfolds. You had a guy come in to do a documentary, and some of the people that were working on the documentary were not believers. So can you describe this thing with the blindfolds and what happened there? How suddenly this girl realized this was actually for real. These kids were actually doing this.
Yeah, because you see, the blindfold is a complete blackout. When you've got it on correctly, there's nothing you can see, no light comes through it at all. So one of the crew who came to make the video, she tried it on, and she was absolutely convinced that she couldn't see. She had eyes open under the blindfold, and she couldn't see, albeit that we encourage the children to keep their eyes closed as well under the blindfold. So when she started to witness the children talking about pictures on cards and words in books and colours on books and cards, and she tried to do it herself, she realised that she couldn't. And the way she converted from being a non-believer to an absolute believer was literally in seconds.
And it takes you what, about 10 weeks to 1 hour a week to train these children. And can you talk about the brain, the right brain, left brain, your analysis of how that fits into the scenario?
Absolutely. The children go through a program for 10 to 12 weeks, but they can begin to see in minutes. So depending on the level of the child's consciousness and also the depth of any traumas that they may have, you can sit the child down within seconds of opening them up to this energy, and they can literally tell you the colours, the shapes, the words, the sentences on the page. But it doesn't mean all children will see absolutely through the 10 or 12 weeks. But what they go through is this growth process that actually changes them in so many different ways, that one child can change a family, that can change a community, that can change a country, that could change the world.
Beautiful. You got Sinead excited. She wants to ask a question.
Well, Nicola, I was mentioning to you before we started recording that I've had this long history of working with children myself, and I see, I have a lot of passion for it as well as you do, and I see their potential. So I am very interested. My question for you is, can you walk us through how this works, like from the beginning? So let's say a child comes to you that is new to you. You've never met this child before. What do you do when you meet that child? That's my sort of part A of that question. And then part B would be, if you're going to be working with them, what is the method that you use?
Okay. I can't actually go through the opening up process with you, because that's what we have to do with teacher training. But what I can tell you is that when they come, they sit with you for literally a minute or so. We don't engage in general conversation with them, because we're steering them away from the left brain. So when a child comes, the first thing you do is introduce them to the blindfold. They put the blindfold on. They don't question it. They don't ask why they've got to wear it. They just put it on. We take them through the process of connecting them with the universal energies, their own consciousness. And then literally you sit them down and you put a book in front of them. Now, when we're taking them through this, we never ever ask them a question. Never ask a question, because the minute you ask a question, the answer has to begin in the left side of their brain. So we command, of course, with love and gentleness and kindness, but we command. So instead of saying, "What do you see on the book?" we would say, "Tell me what you see on the book." So we actually get them to listen to the command and respond to the command, rather than go to the left brain and ask a question. When they start to see, and you can see a change in them, there's very subtle changes in their face, and they sort of recoil their head a little bit, and they turn their head to the side, and one little girl that I taught, she could only see if she smiled. And she had this great big beam across her face the whole time through the sessions. And she would even talk with a smile. So what they're actually doing is their own consciousness, their spirit, for want of another term, is actually seeing for them. So we go through this process. And so they're looking for colours first. They look for the colours, then they look for shapes and images and so on. But there's always this sort of head movement and a mouth movement that when you see it, however subtle it is, we pounce on it quick, and we really then put the speed into the work. And
just ask me questions.
So, Isabella, tell us what you think about ICU.
I think it's like very good because it helps you not just to see blindfolded, but it helps you to connect in your light, and it does. And sometimes it doesn't just help you to do one thing. If even doing just this, it can help you basically like do other things and develop other things which you never knew you could do.
Tell me what sort of things you've developed.
Well, I've developed my hearing and my sight, because from before I was not that good at hearing and not seeing, mostly not seeing, and because I couldn't see through my glasses. And then ICU helped me to be able to help me with my vision better.
Wonderful.
And also with my hearing, because now I can hear everything from a mile away.
Wow, that's super hearing. So tell us what you're doing here today.
Well, I'm just doing like a piece of colouring, which I'm carrying on.
Fantastic.
I'm using this orangey kind of colour.
Wonderful. Excellent. That's very small, very, very small, isn't it?
Yeah.
Tell me the colour you're using.
Oh, right now I'm just using the orange colour.
Beautiful. Tell me why you think other children should do ICU.
Well, I think it because some children are a bit, have some like problems, not like bad problems, there's nothing wrong, but maybe sometimes they can like develop and help them with the problems. Like if you're like blind or something, this you can still see.
Okay.
And the other thing we do all the way through the whole hour and for all the sessions is we constantly praise them. We tell them how fantastic they are, how amazing, how awesome. And you can almost see them growing in confidence because of the praise. And we have children that are so uncomfortable with praise because they're not used to it. And so we had a little girl who was told how special she was, and she said, "I'm not special." And the teacher said, "But you are special." She said, "No, I'm not." She said, "Well, it doesn't make you any better than anybody else. It doesn't make you different from anybody else. It just means that you've got a lot more to give because of the special parts of you." And she burst into tears, and the teacher said, "Tell me why you're crying." And she said, "Because nobody's ever told me I'm special before." And the growth in that little girl from that moment onwards was phenomenal. So
is this the same little girl who has two sisters that wrote her letters that you have featured on your website?
no,
Okay.
no, it's another little girl. And so what we see and what we encourage in the children is the positive, the powerful, the confidence that they go with, and they learn to accept within themselves. So one of the other aspects that we observe, apart from the facial changes, some of the children read from the side here.
Cinderella put on her beautiful dress. She put on her beautiful shoes. Now I can go to the ball, she said.
Beautiful. Tell me what's on that page.
Her fairy godmother, Cinderella. I think that's a snake.
Looks like it.
And a horse, snake, and a pumpkin.
Point to the black cat for me.
There.
Very clever girl, well done.
And there's the castle.
It is.
The prince danced with Cinderella. After the ball, the prince found Cinderella's shoe.
Wonderful.
I will marry the girl who will fit this shoe, he said. The prince came to Cinderella's house.
Beautiful.
Is this your shoe? He said. Yes, this is my shoe, said the first stepsister. But the shoe did not fit.
Tell me how many plates are on the shelf.
5.
Point to them for me. Count them.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Very good girl, well done. Beautiful.
Is this your shoe? Said the prince. Yes, this is my shoe, said the second stepsister, but the shoe did not fit.
Clever girl, well done. Beautiful reading.
Is this your shoe? Said the prince. Yes, said Cinderella. She put on the shoe and it fit.
Wow.
Will you marry me? Said the prince. Yes, said Cinderella. So she did.
I worked with a little girl who held the book behind her head to read, because effectively every cell in their body is part of their consciousness, and you know, I've had a little boy who held the book in front of his tummy. I couldn't see what he was looking at, and every time he told me what was on the page, I had to peel the book back to have a look to confirm that that's what he was seeing. So one of the common themes that runs through the teaching with them is that their eyes begin to itch. So they have itchy eyes and the eyes begin to water. And that's when we get very excited, because I worked with a guy called Dr. Ken West, who does a lot of subconscious reprogramming, etc., using sacred geometry, but he used to be an ophthalmologist. And he was telling me that when the children are really shifting their consciousness and they're starting to use different parts of the brain to process, what's happening is the eyes are closed and there's no light going through the eyes. So temporarily, the pineal gland is closed down because there's no light going through the eyes. The pineal gland, being the third eye, is shut down, but the brain is now computing that the child is reading. So because the brain hasn't then either recalibrated or rerouted the neural pathways, it sends a little tiny electrical charge to the eyes to stimulate them. So as that tiny electrical charge reaches the eyes start to water and itch. So we get very excited at this point because, I mean, it's a bit sad to say we're excited that a child's eyes are itching, but we know the brain is now on board with the changes that need to happen, the recalibration. And it does pass. It passes, but once the brain has recalibrated and it's totally functioning in the right side of the brain, then we know we're moving forward at a fast pace with the children.
Can you talk about the difference between children and adults? You only train children?
Yeah, adults are very stuck in their left brains because of the logic, the analytical, the left male side of the brain. So if I was to give either of you a blindfold, and you've got a blindfold with little white pads on the inside, you're going to want to know what the white pads are for. So immediately your left brain is active. And then by the time we've explained to you what the white pads are and why you need to wear the blindfold, we've practically lost you. Okay. So also, one of the other reasons we don't train adults, and you know, I don't want to tar them with the same brush, but adults can be very adventurous, and they may learn this for themselves and think, oh, do you know what, I'm just going to teach my kids this. And what they won't have done is gone through the teacher training where, first of all, the teachers are chosen with specific criteria in taking this forward with children. And secondly, they may not have the ability to hold energetic space for the child whilst you're working with them. And thirdly, ego kicks in, because then they may see it as a gimmick, and it loses the whole concept of what we're trying to do with the children for the evolution of humanity, for the future of this planet. So it takes away the energy. And also what I've found, and this is amongst the teachers that have been trained, is as the teachers gather and as more and more become qualified, it's like it's creating, what words could I use here? Like a quantum bubble of a community of teachers that are so interconnected in the work that we're doing. And if you have, I'm going to use the word rogue energy working within that quantum bubble, then it doesn't just disrupt the person that is working with the children or the child that's being worked with. We found it affects all of us.
That goes to vibration. Let me jump in a question there, because Sinead and I were just talking about this morning and yesterday about vibration. And
Yes.
this is this idea that you run a seance group, and you know this whole thing about vibration, and that you need the positive vibration, and you don't allow anybody to come into a seance because they may be bringing in the energy that will destroy the whole thing. Can you talk about, you had the example of one time the father brings the kid, and can you tell that story when the father comes in with the child?
Oh, absolutely. So the little girl is sitting at a table. She's got her book, she's got her blindfold on, and the teacher's with her. The father was very skeptical, but he decided this particular week he was going to bring his daughter because he became curious about what it is she was doing. So he was right behind her at the other side of the room. And his curiosity got the better of him. So he started to walk towards his daughter, who had her back to him. And he was probably within about 2 or 3 feet from her. And she lifted her head up and she said to the teacher, "My vision's gone." It had literally shut down. And so the teacher had seen the father walking towards her, and she beckoned him to move away. And as he stepped away, her vision came back. So it became more and more apparent, and we knew this anyway, that bringing skepticism or someone who wants to test the theory or prove it wrong, by bringing them into a room with a child who's learning, it shuts the child down. And if we look at that in everyday life, vibration is energy. And the more positive we are, the better we can be at anything in life. And you may have a very intelligent child sitting in a classroom of mediocre children, but if that teacher of that child doesn't resonate with the educational level or standard that child needs and ignores him or her, then their vibration is going to drop and they're not going to want to be in that class. So it goes through the whole of life about keeping the positive, powerful vibration, energy up as high as possible to get the best out of our children. And that doesn't change with ICU as well.
Yeah. No! I put it in the wrong place. Wait, where's that one? Wait, Nicola, can it go like that?
He can go that way.
Like this.
He can.
Or I could go like that.
See where you need to go first. That's it. Well done, boys.
Let me see.
Wait for Jaden.
I need to look for his plan. Shazam. I have a plan. Okay, that one. We put it here. 1, 2. Oops, sorry. Boy.
That's it. Turn it around a little bit so Jaden can see it. That's it.
Where did you put it? It's over here. Here. Here.
That's it there. Well done.
I'm putting mine. I did see.
Oh. Doing well, boys.
No! I'll do this. Oh,
That's it.
wait. Let me look for Nathan's plan. Don't. Need to look for your plan. I want to go over this plan.
That's it. Well done.
Nicola, sort of jumping on that, actually going sort of in a way before that, how do these children end up coming to you? Like what, prior to them arriving at your door, what is it that's occurring in their lives that causes their parents or whoever it is, teachers perhaps, that send them to you?
Okay. I've never really had to advertise this because the best form of advertising, as we know, is word of mouth. But people just stumble across the video. You know, consciousness, I believe, weaves these webs of a matrix where, you know, two people are meant to be brought together, and whatever route they take to get together, it happens. But when the parents call me, or any of the other teachers, they say, I've seen this amazing video. That's normally the first words that come out of their mouths. Tell me more about it. How can I get my child involved? And I say to them, well, the first thing, does your child want to do this? Because you cannot make a child go through the program unless they really choose it. So they said, well, you know, my child's very gifted. You know, he or she, you know, hears spirit, or they see auras, or they might just be regular kids who have become naughty or are bored with the education system. So I tell them about the program, and then I say to them, please show your child the video. And you will know by their response to that video if they want to go through this program or not, because we cannot teach a child that hasn't consented. You can't get anything out of them. So that's normally the approach. And I have another story, because a lady I met actually at my Pilates class, it was just completely out of the blue, and we got talking. She showed her daughter the video, and the daughter didn't say a single word all the way through it. And when the video came to an end, she just ran upstairs to her bedroom and disappeared. And the mum was shouting at her, you know, up the stairs, are you okay? You know, where are you? What are you doing? And there was silence. So she went up to her daughter's bedroom and pushed the door open, and she said, are you okay? She said, yes, Mummy, I'm looking for a blindfold.
That's great. I mean, the kids are obviously more able to tune into it and get excited about it in a non-judgmental way, right, rather than adults. I have another question for you, if that's all right.
Yes.
So your organization is called ICU, Inspiring Children University. And you've got a list of skills that you're bringing to what you're doing. So you're a spiritual consultant, a healer, a psychic medium, a trance channeler, a teacher, a guide, a facilitator, and someone who empowers others to reach their full potential. You do light language and perhaps other things as well. So what I'm curious about is, how do you find this sounds like a very holistic approach, right? Obviously, this is a holistic approach to helping children develop their intuition, their abilities. How do you find that your skill set helps you in your role as the leader of this organization?
Oh, in so many ways. You know, I have a very strong intuition. And so right from the very start of bringing new people on board to work with the children, you know, there's quite an extensive application form that people need to go through and and complete and forward for assessment, including a photograph of themselves. Now, just using my intuition, I don't actually need to read the application form. I can look at the picture and say yes or no. And actually, the application form is more to trigger the person that's filling it out, so that they can be sure it's right for them, because there's some quite in-depth questions in there asking about their ego and what their fears are and what their strengths are. And it's for them to recognize exactly who they are and how they're going to move forward with this. But also, where I teach groups of people, however many in a group, I've learned how to hold space, so I can adjust the energy per person in the room. So transferring that to the children, when I'm working with the children, I can intuit and I can sense their energy, and I can hold a space for them that if their energy drops because they're tired, I can hold it up for them until the end of the session. Also, even just how this program came into creation was through the channeling of the information. So all of my skills, I feel, are necessary to drive the program forward and to build it and to increase the volume of teachers. But it doesn't mean that everybody needs that level of skill set in order to become a teacher.
Thank you. And I think Grant has something else he wants to ask. I'm going to hand it over to him.
I've got like 100 questions. You did mention the fact, and I noticed people pointed out to me that because I've been promoting these videos, people have been pointing out the fact that the child sort of looks from the side. It's like they're not even looking at the book as they're reading it. It's kind of strange. In the one video where this crew comes in, if you remember, he draws the car for the kid, and he's got it actually sort of facing the other way, and they already pick it off. Oh, it's a car.
Can I draw something and then you redraw it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't know if you can tell what this is.
Car.
What? I didn't even point it at you yet.
So have you seen that? Where how good is the sight? I mean, do they have to actually look at the book, or can they see it from a different angle? Because when I see it, what I think about is the out-of-body experience or the near-death experience, where we think we see through our eyes and hear through our ears, but when somebody has near-death experience, they're in the corner of the room, they can still hear, they can still see. And when I saw what you were doing, it impressed on me that this is the same thing. This is this kind of sight that you get when you've left your body, that you can see anything. And so, and especially when it came to the two children saying they could hear things a mile away, have you looked at the abilities of what they can actually see other than just reading and doing stuff like that? And especially the thing I'm interested in, the thing about the hearing. Have you looked at what can they actually hear when they say they can hear things a mile away? Because as you mentioned the first time we had a sort of a private interview, you stated you would actually work with blind people, and to me it looks like, I mean, if this was developed, you could actually work with blind people and people who are deaf, and actually they could actually hear and see.
Yeah. Going back to the first part, what people need to understand is that when we expand the child's consciousness and they're working in perfect alignment with that, they step into spherical time. So the linear time being past, present, and future being completely separate, and spherical time being all concurrent, so past, present, and future running concurrently. In spherical time, the children have the potential to see anywhere. Okay. Now, if we look at Lucy, who said that there was a car and he had the clipboard facing him, what we're looking at there is, if it's the higher consciousness of the child that is involved in that practice, the higher consciousness is everywhere. So just as they can see out of every cell in their body, they can see exponentially everywhere else. Now, we also need to be mindful that these are children and they need to grow up as children as well. So what we can't afford to happen is for their abilities to be exploited. Okay, but every child has the opportunity to see exponentially, but we also have to be mindful that if it's part of their life path to take the sight to extraordinary levels, then the child will take them to extraordinary levels. If the child goes through the program, grows exponentially through the education system, and that's all they're meant to do with it, then that's what will happen. So we can't interfere with the life purpose, the life path of the children. We're giving them the tools to use whatever they need to in their own life path going forward. Okay. Now, when they're looking at the side, what we understand is that the side view, whether it be right, left, I mean, Lucy, who's in the video, she used to see from underneath her nose. And what we're aware of is it's the focal point for the higher consciousness before it expands into spherical time. So just to give it an example, if it's their spirit that's seeing and it's standing here on the right shoulder, then it needs to turn to be able to see before they expand into spherical. Okay. Now, with the seeing, which, okay, some people might say it's psychic, some people might say it's spherical, but we had another little girl who was going along in the car, and she was quite low down and the sun was fairly low in the sky, and the sun visor didn't block the sun from her eyes. So the guy that was driving her said, well, put your blindfold on. And he was a complete skeptic. But he said, oh, if it's that bright, put your blindfold on. So she did. And in that moment, she said to him, stop the car. And he said, well, why? She said, there's a man in the road. He's got a walking stick and a dog and he's wearing a hat. Stop the car. He's in the middle of the road. And his skepticism said, don't be ridiculous. There's no man in the road. And as they turned the bend and the car went round the bend, there was the man in the road.
Yeah. That's where I see that what you're developing to me is more than just kids seeing. It's this whole other aspect of what's actually seeing, what's actually hearing, especially when the kids and these kids were not in asked the question. When I heard that both those kids say, I can hear a mile away, I'm thinking, this is something completely different. This is something that if the world were to realize that this is actually where you're seeing, because the idea is like, where are you actually seeing? Like, where is the vision? Where is the little screen in the speakers? There is none. It's not really in the head. And we have this sort of impression. And I think that's what you're sort of killing, that idea of what's actually seeing, what's actually hearing, that these kids have this potential, especially when you get into the thing where the kid sees precognitive as to what's going on, then it's a whole different aspect of what we really are as human beings.
If we take energy of consciousness, whether you want to call it spirit or whatever you want to call it, it's everywhere. Yeah. When I communicate with deceased people, they're everywhere. It's not like they're standing here beside me. The energy of who they were in a lifetime is everywhere. And what we're giving these children the opportunity to be is more of their spirit self, their consciousness, than their human self. So you mentioned about the blind lady that I worked with, and she lost her sight. I think it was about 7 years before I did the program with her, and I really believe she was sent to me to prove it works with people that have lost their sight. And we went through several sessions, and this particular day she was holding a book, and she had her head turned to the side as well. And the book, it was a child's book. It was colourful, and she took the book and she was holding it and she was saying, "There's green down this side." And I'm saying to her, "Yes, tell me more about the green." And she said, "There's like branches coming off of it." And all of a sudden she said, it's a tree. It's a tree. And she saw the tree on the page. And she was so excited. She cried. I cried because it was just the most amazing experience. But actually she didn't continue with the work. I think it kind of shocked her to a point, bearing in mind she was an adult and we're talking about left brain here. So the ego kicks in and says, "No, you didn't really see that." But she described it, every detail, what she saw. But I really believe she was sent to me to prove it works. And it really did that day. So we have so much potential here.
Do you use the same method with these adults who have lost their sight as you do with the children that come to you? Do you go through this?
I've only worked with one, but yes, it would be the same method. The only thing I haven't explored yet, and that's teaching children who were born without their sight, because they have no concept of colours, shapes, words, images. But that doesn't mean we can't teach them, because all children have to be taught that that's red and that's green and that's a ball and that's a cat. So if we can, see, my theory is if I can take a book and I can go through the process with a child that was born blind, and even if they see something on the page and they trace the outline with their finger, we know that they're seeing. And then once they trace the outline, we can say, yes, that's called a cat. Now, we're taking it into a whole new level here, and that's a lot more intense than just 10 or 12 sessions. This is like a whole education. But I believe it can work. I know it can, but we need to work with what we have first so that it becomes more recognizable to mainstream before we blow people's minds with blind people being able to see.
Yeah.
If it's meant to come, it'll come. You know, and you know, we could finish this interview and the phone could ring and I have somebody saying, "I've got this child and we would really love her to do the program," and I just go, "Yeah, bring it on." I am guided by consciousness all the time.
You're making me think of, I've worked with culturally deaf people and culturally deaf children for a long time. And there's a sign language, American Sign Language sign for hearing,
Yes.
which is hearing, right? But there's also an American Sign Language sign for hearing that is different. And this is sort of a slangier, it could be regional. I don't think it's a widespread sign, but that this is hearing.
Okay.
So that would be for people who are completely deaf, do not rely on sound at all. So not like myself, I rely on cochlear implants, but these would be people who are culturally deaf, meaning do not use hearing aids, do not use a cochlear implant, they don't speak. And so it's a way of indicating that they hear with their eyes. Yeah. And then if you think of people who can see, so-called with their fingers through touch, right, by sensing color or sensing something just by touching it.
Vibration.
Yes, vibration, yes. And so I have a question for you about that. What is the connection with this form of spiritual sight and remote viewing, if any?
I haven't explored any connection with it at all, because my focus has been on getting this up and running. Now, there could very well be a connection, but I haven't explored it yet, so I can't give you a definitive answer on that.
your story about the old man in the road made me think of remote viewing, right?
Oh
Seeing,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know, did she send her vision ahead, or was she working with her psychic abilities? Because what we find as well is that the children, they don't develop their psychic abilities because they're born with psychic abilities, but we're giving them the opportunity for them to stay, to sharpen, to expand. So my feeling is the little girl in the car with the man around the corner, she was picking that up psychically. But I haven't sat with her and said, how did you see him? Because what I don't want to do is engage her left brain. So really what we're doing is trusting that whatever the ability is, whether it's remote viewing, whether it's psychic abilities, whether she sent her spirit round the corner and the spirit relayed telepathically back what was being, what was needed for her to you know, tell the driver, we haven't questioned.
Okay. What? No, I forgot what my question was.
So much to ask, so little time.
Yeah. What happens with the children after the 10 or 12 weeks? Do they continue to train? Do you still see the children? Because I remember I asked you what your oldest child was, whether they still were involved, and you told me about that 16-year-old kid with the computers.
Yeah. So we encourage the parents to continue working with them after the sessions have finished. Sometimes we bring the children back together and they do exercises and they have fun. You know, in this last 2 summers ago, we had the children in the garden here, and we had like a school sports day, but blindfolded. So they were doing running and egg and spoon races and things like this. So we have a lot of fun with them. But what we find is that they will either carry on seeing or they don't. But what I understand with the 16-year-old, he was my first student, and what we found is he has a perfect balance between the left and the right hemisphere of his brain. I don't even think we can call it a left and a right, because it's like he just has one hemisphere. And so he's very happy in his own skin. He's very intuitive. He can walk into a room, sense the room. If he doesn't like what he senses, he has no problem turning around and walking out. It doesn't matter to him whether he's with a group of people or spending time on his own. He is just at one with himself. But one of the subjects at school is computer science, and his teacher is pretty blown away with him, because on one hand he can build computers very, very well, and on the other hand he can program equally as well. So it's as though the left brain and the right brain work so well together, even if it's just one hemisphere now, that he can do all aspects of the computer science, where, as I'm informed, you normally do one or the other. It's a bit like a quantum physicist. The quantum physicist can either believe that the universe is solid or energy. Well, with this young lad, he probably sees both sides and is not bothered whether it's solid or energy. He would just get on and do what he has to do.
Now, a lot of people will see this video and go to your videos if they suddenly get inspired that they want to show it to their child, or they want to be trained, or they want to follow up. What's the process? Because we have the virus thing going on. So what are you doing in terms of your training and these sort of things if people are interested?
Okay, we've suspended the training with the children because they need to be present with you. You cannot teach them on the internet. But the teacher training program has been suspended. I was supposed to be in Philadelphia and Madrid and Lisbon this year, and of course, you know, no flights, no teaching. I am in the process of preparing the work to become an online course. That's not something you would download and learn. It's live. It's a live course for 3 days. I had hoped to have it ready for the end of May, beginning of June, but guidance has halted that because the timing's not right to release it online. And I believe that in June I shall start to open registration for people to apply to become teachers, with the process happening, the training course rolling out mid-August onwards. So, sorry, go ahead.
No. And what should people, like you talk about the sort of what people should know before they become a teacher. What would you say to sort of weed people out before you get like 1,000? Of course, you say you can sort of just tell by the photo, but a lot of people might want to just decide they want to do it. But what should people that should sort of stay away from it, do you think?
Okay, the people that end up doing the training, they feel it instantly in their heart. There's this passion, there's this, I know I have to do this. So they're guided to the ICU Academy website, where they can download the application form. They then send the application form in for assessment. It's mostly people who have the knowing that the children can change the world. And they know within their own psyche, within their own heart, that they can work with the children and that they can take the program forward. Trust me, this is not for the faint-hearted, not at all. Because when you're working with a child for just 1 hour, I would equate it to a full week's work in an office or something like that. Because when you're working on all levels of your own consciousness, you're holding space. You've got to have eyes in every part of your own body to observe the child. Are their feet flat on the floor? Is their back straight? Are they pointing to the colour? What's happening with their face? What's their energy? You just go through this whole hour of complete alertness. Honestly, I could lie down for a week after I've done one session. So the people that apply need to have the drive, the passion, the energy, the desire, the knowing within them that this is something that they want to do.
So Nicola, relating to that, just talking about teachers, you have some wonderful information on your website as to how this process of learning changes the children. You know, you mentioned that it encourages their feelings of self-empowerment, their confidence, their ability to communicate their feelings, their abilities, all kinds of things. So when it comes to these teachers, we've just spoken about what you need to know about people before you approve them to become teachers in the training program, or what their experience is. They feel like they're called to it. What about after they've gone through the training and they start working with children? They've been working with these children for a while. What are you hearing from teachers about their own experience of how they change and how they become different, how their lives become different?
Oh, the teachers grow just as much as the children do. Because when you see the change in the child, it alters something within your own energy. And it's not like you're wanting reward or recognition for what you're doing. Your own vibration starts to increase, the frequency goes up, the excitement and the heart expansion that happens when you're working with the children is not like anything you could imagine. And what I find with the teachers is their levels of compassion increase, their desire for a better world increases. They know that they can make a difference. They go through this growth themselves that is almost indescribable, but all the senses become sharpened. You want to know more. You know that there's more out there, and you go through quantum shifts in your own energy.
And then during sessions, and here I'm kind of thinking about the children, what do you hear from them about what their experience is? Like right then and there, they have the blindfold on, they're reading the book with the blindfold on, or there might be, maybe they're doing another task as well. What is their own experience? What do they tell you afterwards about what that's like for them?
Nothing. Because to them it's natural. It's like going out, getting on a bicycle, riding around the field on a bicycle, coming back home, putting the bicycle away, coming indoors and having their dinner. They're not wowed by it. They're not like, wow, that was really cool. The only responses I have sometimes is the children want to come and live with me.
Are there any kids that it doesn't work for?
Oh, depends what you mean doesn't work for. If you mean never see,
yeah,
absolutely. But what they go through in other areas of their growth is way beyond that you'd want them to be able to see. Because the seeing, as I said, is the cherry on top of the cake. The actual program itself is the most precious gift you can give a child in those early years. You give them confidence, you give them levels of self-esteem, self-worth that they wouldn't get anywhere else. You take them through an energetic program where education becomes really easy for them. You know, we had a little boy who came home from school and he said to his mom, I've got math homework to do and I don't know how to do it and I've got to give it to the teacher tomorrow. And she said, well, didn't you listen? And he said, yes, I listened, but I didn't understand it. And the mom said, well, why didn't you go to the teacher and ask her to explain it to you? He said, I did, but she said she didn't have time. And he started to cry. And in the mother's wisdom, she said, put your blindfold on, get your homework out, sit at the table and do it. And he did it, no problem at all. And he got it all right. So what we also understand in the growth of the children, whether they see or not, is that the subconscious is working with the superconsciousness at the same time. And what they hear and what they see with their physical is nothing compared to what they hear and see with the non-physical, meaning their consciousness, their higher consciousness.
That's what impressed me the most, is when I saw it, I saw something completely, not just kids, you know, being able to read with a blindfold. It was this whole higher level of what you seem to have, it's almost like what happens when a person has a near-death experience. Because, and I think you mentioned this as well, and we had this, since I talked to you first, I went to a bunch of people and I got confirmation, not from near-death experiences yet, but from people with out-of-body experiences, is when you were there, was your sight and your hearing better? I haven't got the hearing yet, but the sight I did get, or the sight, yes, I have very bad eyesight, and when I was out of my body, I had 20/20 vision. I think you described the same thing with the children, right?
I did, and I can vouch for the out-of-body because I've had one myself. I was standing in a room watching myself dying in a bed, and I heard the minutest sounds in the room, and I saw everything as clear as day. And the day I recalled it through a session I was having because of post-traumatic stress at the time, when I recalled it in the finest detail that you can imagine. And yes, it's very much along the same lines.
Yeah, that the kids' sight it increases to 20/20, that there is no...
Oh, one of the children, the little girl that says I can hear from a mile away,
yeah,
when she's in the classroom, she has to wear glasses because she can't see.
There you go.
But when she's got the blindfold on, she has 20/20 vision.
Yeah, that's the potential to me. That's just absolutely... I think the only thing you're missing is a video of the kid playing ping pong. I mean, when I saw that, because I always like to poke the bear, I like to poke the skeptics, and there'll still be skeptics. And when I saw the one with the ping pong, I go like, oh, that's just unreal.
Oh. Well, I have recent video of two brothers that went through the program playing ball in the garden.
Wow. Yeah, that's and it does, even just the videos inspire people. Like, they may have some skepticism, but it's still going to make you think. It's going to go like, wow, that's something else. It's very visual. It's very inspiring, and I think that's why I think you may be right in the next year that this may sort of open up. That because I'm going to promote it all I can. When I saw it, I just couldn't get enough. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing, Because
Well,
it occurred to me, the whole left brain, right brain, because I've had this book called Contact Modalities, which will be out within next week. And that's basically the whole book, is all the people with whatever contact modality you can talk about, all the people doing this and that, whatever. It's all the same thing. It's the ability to shut down the left brain ego and pick up the signal. Everybody's got the signal. And that's why you can't train adults, because there's so much garbage, or that's why people aren't abducted when they're adults, because you'd need a huge big rubber boots and a shovel to dig deep enough to get an idea in there. Because that's the thing is, and that's when that triggered me, was when you said this thing about the children, is you train children because the left brain has not come back online. I was just fascinated with that. So I'll do what I can. If you got any more questions, Sinead, because I want to just have one question about mediumship.
I do have a question, but feel free to go.
Go ahead. No, we'll finish this. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So Nicola, because your program is so holistic, I am imagining that the learning for the children, or what you tell their parents and the children themselves in terms of their learning plan, it's not just occurring when they're sitting in front of you or another teacher at a table for the lesson, that's the only time that the learning is occurring and the development is occurring. So given your holistic approach, what are you recommending to the children and their parents in terms of the transfer of their knowledge and understanding into just how they operate in daily life? What are some suggestions that you give them? So for example, are you telling them to spend time in silence or in nature?
Okay. The children, we're not allowed to use the word homework because they associate that with school. So we give them home practice, and they have to sit for 10 to 15 minutes every day with one of the parents or an older sibling maybe, and practice every day. There is nothing they need to do to transfer this into everyday life, because it transfers naturally. So there's nothing we give them. We give them extra exercises to do. We give them some exercises where they use their cognitive function to improve their psychic abilities. But we're not telling them that it's to improve their psychic abilities. We tell them it's to improve the concentration, and the psychic abilities start to improve naturally. So there is no transference. There's nothing we say to them, you must do this, you mustn't do that. We let it organically and naturally transfer into everyday life.
I did notice that when you were in the one training session, you were talking to the kids, you were talking sort of about things that weren't just necessarily seeing or hearing. It was sort of like energy. You were talking about let it go down your arm and stuff like that. What are you giving them higher concepts of how things work in terms of understanding it?
No. Literally what we're doing is we're aligning them with their natural abilities. So whatever we do in a session, in the opening up process, which takes 5 minutes maximum, they go through a series of energetic exercises in order to connect them with the higher consciousness. What happens after that is completely natural. There is no two children are the same, and no two sessions are ever the same. Just when I train teachers, the dynamic of each class is never ever the same. I haven't got a roadmap of going from A to B in how I train the teachers, or a roadmap A to B on how I take the children through the program. It is literally adjusting the dynamic with every session and every child or every group of teachers that I train, dependent on the level of intelligence, the spiritual intelligence, the energy, the consciousness. It just constantly changes. That's also why it's exhausting as a teacher.
Yeah, I mean, that's not surprising at all. It's because it is holistic, not just in the delivery, but also in the experience of what any person in that setting is going to soak up during that time, because of the energy and vibration that's created in the room.
Now, can I add something here? Because I think this is really important for the people watching this to know that this program also is very powerful for children who come on the autistic spectrum. Because for me, autism is, in its simplest terms, the vibration of the soul, the spirit, the consciousness of the child isn't able to reduce its frequency to feel comfortable in a human body. Okay, and I liken it to having a lamp that can take a 30-watt light bulb, but you're trying to put a 120-watt light bulb into it, and it keeps blowing and it blows fuses. And that's in its simplest terms on how I see autism. But what I see in a grand picture is high vibrational children that are being expected to function in a low vibrational world. So when we take the children through this program as well, with ADHD, ADD, Asperger's, autism, whatever that level they are on that spectrum, they align with their vibration. And when you talked about the out-of-body experiences, the remote viewing, I was working with a little boy who was sat cross-legged on the floor doing a puzzle with his blindfold on, and all of a sudden he threw himself back. He went, and I said, "Tell me what you're experiencing." And he said, "You didn't tell me I looked this ridiculous in this blindfold." His spirit had spun round and shown him what he looked like. So and he has Asperger's, and so what I love working with these children, because I know they need to function in a world that their vibration isn't comfortable in. And when you take them into an expanded consciousness and they can function on a near normal level, which I call natural, it's incredible.
I love hearing you say that, Nicola. In fact, what you just said about autistic children is my own. It's like you took the words out of my mouth, and I think you're the only other person I've ever heard say that. So I just really feel excited that I just heard you say that. And also, it's interesting because it's, you know, there's so much talk right now about us all being at a great time of transition. This is a time of evolution for the human species. And how do children with disabilities, how do people with disabilities fit into this as people who are experiencing life differently, who are expressing themselves differently, who are processing differently. So it's interesting that autism has become so incredibly widespread, so incredibly quickly at exactly the same time that this transition is occurring. You know, it seems like it's a part of our evolution as human beings. We have this idea that evolution has finished, right? Yeah. That evolution was in the past and that we are the pinnacle of evolution. Yeah. But, you know, that's obviously not true. And so this seems to be a part of our natural evolution as human beings, which is very exciting.
Well, yes, evolution has reached its limit and now we're moving into expansion. And I see these children, I've always believed that instead of bringing them down into the world, we got to wait for the world to come up to them. And that's what I think. Well, I don't think, I know we're on the cusp of.
Which is why education needs to change, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah. Good.
Grant, is there anything you want to say?
Do you do any lecturing at all to, have you been invited by any of the consciousness people that, because there's a lot of consciousness conferences around, stuff like that. Have you done any of that?
No, I was going to go and do one in Italy last year, and I was prepared for it. And literally, as I was preparing to go, so many things were put in my path, preventing me from being there. And I pulled out. Okay. But I knew in myself it wasn't the right platform. But I also know that when the right platforms appear, then I'll be there. You know, strangely, my whole life has groomed me very much for what is current and what is coming. And even when I was a child, I was trained in public speaking, you know, so it's a very natural part for me. So I have no problem doing them. I just haven't had the opportunity yet.
Yeah. You believe sort of similar to me that you have a life path, a soul contract, and then when the time is right, that's when it's going to happen and not before, right?
Absolutely, because everything I do, if I try to force something into creation, it gets blocked, it gets blocked, it gets blocked. And when the time is right, there's such a divine flow that it's flawless. It's grace and ease. And that's how I live my life now, because there is no way forward unless you're in the flow of consciousness.
Maybe sometime we can do another interview on some of the other stuff you do, because I'm so interested in the stuff you're doing. But I want to have at least one sort of comment, because you are into, the other thing I'm into big in is seances, and you have a circle. Can you talk a little bit about your circle in London there, and how long it's been going, and how you see that tying into what we're talking about right now?
Okay, yeah. I started to train as a trance medium about maybe 10 years ago, and I started to develop the ability to move into the trance states in order for energies to channel through me. So I've set up a room here in my home. It's black. You can't see a speck of light in there. I also have what's called a trance cabinet. So the cabinet is there to contain the energies whilst you're working in those trance states. I have 5 people that sit with me. We sit once a week. Well, we did until we couldn't. Every Friday morning, and we sit for whatever consciousness wants to bring through into that room. So it's not just for physical phenomena. It could be for communication. It could be for the channeling of multidimensional sound or language. It could be for the people in the room to have energetic upgrades, downloads of different types of consciousness or light. But we don't just sit for ourselves, we sit for the highest good of whoever's going to benefit from it. Because regardless of what we receive in that room, we're receiving on behalf of humanity anyway, because we believe that we're not separate from anybody. So if I'm receiving something, you're receiving something, we're receiving it for the whole, not just for the individual. So we work as a collective consciousness in that room. Sometimes there's light anomalies, there's all sorts happens in there. But one of the most profound things that happened was this one particular day, I started to take on an energy that was using my breath, and you couldn't distinguish between the in-breath and the out-breath. But whether it was coming in or going out, the breath, the sound was lasting for like 60, 70, 80 seconds. And this one particular day, the breath started and it increased in velocity, and they said it was like it was like a sonic boom going across the room, and the window that's completely blacked out literally shook. So I know. So when we sit together, we sit in unity. We sit for the highest good of humanity. We work in the highest levels of consciousness that are available to us, and we accept what comes.
Do you use any sort of raising of vibration, or do you use meditation, or how do you start it out? Because a lot of seances will use music. A lot of C5 UFO tape people will use meditation things to raise the vibration. Is that part of the protocol?
While I'm going into a trance state, there's music playing, okay. And the group literally connect their hearts together. They send an energetic vibration into the center of the room, and they connect their hearts together to create the divine essence in the room. Then they'll sing some songs, but we're talking like really modern songs. So the music's playing, they sing to raise the vibration. And at some point, they'll either know they have to stop, or there's a signal through me that they need to stop and adjust, whatever's happening in the room. The energies that speak through me, they know them very well, and they've become quite attuned to know when to stop singing or what they need to do next. So because this has been building, this group's been building for probably 3-4 years, there's a coherence in there that it's the knowing.
It's the same people every week, right? You don't
Absolutely.
bring in, it's what I guess what they call a closed circle.
Yeah, sometimes I'm guided to invite people to come and join us, but they're normally people who are of a similar vibration, but it's not. It's quite rare.
Yeah, I know. I was going to get into a David Thompson seance. I've been waiting for like 5 months to get my approval to go in because they're very, very suspicious of outsiders, especially investigators like myself, where they don't want the bad vibrations in there. One last question, and then we'll let you go. Sinead is into healing. Give me your take on healing. You do healing. What's your interpretation of what's going on there?
I don't believe that anybody is a healer.
Okay.
I believe that if you are involved in any form of healing modality, you're a facilitator of healing. So when I'm working with anybody, whether it's with my hands, whether it's with my voice, whether it's just with pure energy, I'm a channel, I'm a facilitator of that healing for the person to self-heal. Because as they take what's given, their higher consciousness, their spirit, their heart, their body, the cells in their body know what to do. So I love healing, and in fact I created a new healing modality 2 years ago purely based on the vagus nerve in the body. And because the vagus nerve is connected to every organ, we're having some profound results just by facilitating the energy through the vagus nerve. And so as a facilitator of healing, I'm a channel. And what that person does with the energy, how the body responds, how the spirit, the higher self, the higher consciousness wants to use it, that is unique and private to that individual person. And it's up to them how they progress with it.
I love how you expressed that, Nicola. That was just so beautifully, clearly expressed. And I think so many people who watch this are going to relate to that because as we all know, all of us have abilities. It's just a matter of whether or not we're able to tap into them. But we all have that potential. It exists within all of us. And of course, it also because we're all interconnected with the energy source. So I think so many people who watch this are going to relate to what you just said and are going to find it very encouraging.
Good. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Beautiful. So I guess if you haven't got any questions, Sinead, we'll leave it at that. I'll work on trying to get your Nobel Prize because I think your stuff is very important. I will be talking about it endlessly. I talk about Diana Hesse Powell. I'll be talking about you because it's one of the, as I said, and I'm not kidding, this is one of the most important things I've seen in many years in terms of people understanding how the world actually works. So it's not just kids seeing, it's what this is telling us about how the world works. I think you've sort of illustrated a completely different world in terms of how it actually works. So, and I'll see if I can try to get you into some sort of consciousness thing where it may be the right time for you to talk about it because it's fascinating stuff. It's very visual and very, very important.
Well, what I've been told recently is that moving forward, this is potentially going to grow exponentially.
Yeah.
And as it carves a path through human consciousness, it has the potential to change the human ideal. And as we work with the children, because as you'll see on the website, it says the children are our future. Their children, because the neural pathways have changed in the brain of the parents, the children are going to be born. They won't need teaching. They'll be born with those natural abilities.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Absolutely beautiful.
New human genesis.
Beautiful. I'm honored to talk to you. Thank you for taking the time, and hopefully we can do it again. I'm going to keep watching your material, and I'll let you know how the reaction I get, and you'll be able to see how people react. But a lot of the people that watch my stuff sort of understand a little bit about what we're talking about. So hopefully we'll make it expand a little bit more and bring your dream to fruition.
That would be super amazing.
I'm honored. Thank you very much, and thank you, Sinead, for adding this to your busy day as a teacher, and hopefully we can move the message on. Thank you.
Thank you.
So it's always a pleasure for me to do this, and I'm very grateful that I have the opportunity to do this with you. I mean, it's wonderful to meet such wonderful people, such as Nicola, who are doing this exciting, fascinating work. So thank you, Grant. And Nicola, thank you so much for being here. This is a really terrific interview. I've enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
Very, very welcome. And thank you both of you for believing in it. It's amazing.